Hey, what's going on, everyone? It's Camille Aiko. I hope that you are living the life that you love spiritually, mentally, physically, and financially on this wonderful Saturday evening. So go ahead and drop a 1 if you are catching this live. If you're catching this on replay, go ahead and drop those 2 belows. Let me know where you're chiming in from. So I'm chiming in from Cincinnati, Ohio, and I'm excited to be talking to you all about the topic of do not do anything that doesn't feel right. So this is actually episode 5 of Protect Your Vibe. So as you're joining in, go ahead and drop a 1 below if you're going to watch us live. Drop a 2 below if you're catching this on replay. And I would love to know where you guys are chiming in from. So what's going on? Good evening, everyone, to who is tuning in. So protect your vibe. It's so important because we know that it's all energy, our vibration that we give off to other people. Hey, what's going on, cousin? Our energy is so important to the progression that we make in life. It is important to the goals, the effort that we put into our goals. It is important to the influence that we have on other people. And so when Melanie, you are live, honey. Drop a 2 if it's a replay. Drop 1 if you're catching it live. But hey, girl, hey. So just being able to protect your vibe is key because people can come in and they just want to ruin your life with their negative energy. And that's what we don't want to do. We want to make sure that we, Indianapolis, Indiana. What's going on, Philip? We want to make sure that we block the people out who want to come and taint our energy, those who want to see us fail, those who just, want to have a negative party. We don't have time for that, okay? We all have places that we want to go. We have levels that we want to achieve. And if we don't protect our vibe and we allow negative people to come in or we allow their negative energy to make our energy negative, then we know that it's going to cause a stunt in our own growth. And that's something that we don't want to happen. Right. And so that's why it's so important. And that's why I've been focusing on protect your vibe because stuff happens. Y'all already know stuff happens. And one of the biggest problems we have in life is people, dealing with people and how to deal with the issues and problems that we have, how to overcome them without allowing it to really hurt us and put us in a place where we no longer want to progress forward, right? So on tonight, with us talking about don't do anything that doesn't feel right. Now, I'm not talking about just getting like butterflies in your stomach because you got to go on stage or, there's something that takes you outside of your comfort zone. We know that, that may not necessarily feel right. However, what we are talking about is when you have that intuition, right? That intuitive, that instinctual thing like, something isn't quite right here. So there's this woman. Her and her family, they were going to buy a home. The kids were excited. They were about to move. They were about to close on the house. Everything was going perfect. It was aligned as planned. Everything, it was seamless. The whole process of purchasing this home. Now, the problem is in like the 11th hour, right? Last minute, the mom is like, you know what? We're not doing this. We're not moving. And she couldn't explain it. She had no reason. There was no good reason anyway of why. It was just a gut feeling. She was just like, no, we're not doing it. And she was like, normally she's really flexible in her decisions, but this time she was like, no, we can't do it. And she was really adamant about her decision. So even though they had already chosen the house, they were about to go to closing, the kids were excited. They were going to start this new life. Everything was going to be great, new beginnings. She was like, no. So they ended up buying a house that was right there in their hometown. Well, later on in the year, at the school district, at the school where her son was going to be attending school, there was a school shooting. And 26 students ended up dying in that school shooting. See, this is the type of thing where I'm saying, and it's not always an extreme case like that, but there are those cases where we just have this instinct, right? We just have this intuition, like there's just something within us that's saying this does not feel right. And that's what we're talking about on tonight, because when you go against what you feel on the inside, like that thing that is telling you, don't do that, don't spend that money, don't take that job, don't date that person, don't do these things, then we do those very things that our instinct is telling us not to, oftentimes we end up in a place of regret, right? And that's what we don't want to do, because when you end up in a place of regret, then it's always like, man, I knew that I shouldn't have done that. And then we're down on ourselves. And now we need to have pep talk after pep talk and inspiration and encouragement after the next person to try and build ourselves back up to where we should have been anyway, had we had paid attention to our instinct, had we had paid attention to our intuition, right? So then the other thing to keep in mind with this is just when you know that you're about to embark on something that goes against your beliefs or your morals or your values, right? When you're about to embark on something that goes against that, just know that the solution, or not the solution, but the result is never good, right? It always comes down to a point again where it's like you feel shame, you feel regret, you go through this big cycle of emotions that you now have to overcome, that you wouldn't have had to have overcome had you have done what you needed to do in the very beginning. See, God speaks to us, and God lets us know very clearly the things that we should and should not be doing, right? And so those are really the basics things, though, that if it's going against your morals, your values, it's going against the things that you believe, then you know that you shouldn't be doing it anyway, right? And it is going to prick you. It is going to convict you. It is going to make you feel some type of way. And then when you go out and do it, it's kind of like when you were younger and you did something against what the rules were of your household. You probably went out and you still were, even though you were there in the moment, you weren't really there in the moment because you knew you weren't supposed to be doing it. You knew that you were completely against the rules. And that's how it is. And our vibe ends up getting completely off track because we are, even though we're there, we're not really presently in the moment. And people can feel if you're really engaged in the moment or not, right? So even though you were out having this good time, you weren't really having a good time because you knew, like, man, I just know mom and dad are about to be up. They're going to catch me. Even if mom and dad weren't up, and even if they didn't catch you, that was still in the back of your mind. One time me and my friend, absolutely, William, but one time me and my friends, we snuck out the house, okay? And my one friend, he ends up, and if you're on, I don't think you're on here, but anyway, he ends up getting his mother's rental car, okay? So we are cruising the town at night in his mother's rental car. And so then we had like the lights on. We couldn't figure out how to turn the interior lights on in the car. As we're driving down the street, we passed this policeman and we're just freaking out because we're like, oh my gosh, we're going to get pulled over because we have this light on. Oh my gosh, oh my gosh. So even though we are out, experience all this freedom that we wanted to experience, we're still freaking out because we can't figure out how to get these lights on. We know that we're doing something we're not supposed to be doing. So as soon as we saw the police, we're like, oh my gosh, it's over. We're going to jail. Like, it's a wrap. We're about to be punished for what we're doing, right? And we know that that's just, even though that is an example of when I was younger, it still works the same way. That when we go against the things that we know that we're supposed to be doing, right, and we know that it doesn't feel right, you can't even properly enjoy those things because in your mind, you know that it doesn't feel right. You know you're not supposed to be doing it. So as we're driving, we finally end up getting the lights off, right, and we're coming home. So I'm being dropped off at the house, and as I'm being dropped off at the house, we see, this time it's like early in the morning. And so I hop out the car like on some like real, I don't know, like some spy-ish type stuff. Like I'm just going to hop out, roll out the car real quick, run up the hill and try and get back in the window before I get caught doing what I'm doing, right? So with that, right, there's this white van that is following us. But so we're freaking out again because we know that we're not supposed to be doing what we're doing, we knew that we were in the wrong, but we were doing it anyway, right? And so even though when you're doing something that doesn't feel right and you know you're not supposed to be doing it, then you cannot enjoy it. So we're driving down the street. There's this white van that's following us. So now we think there's like some detectives that have been following us. We've been caught on. Our parents know what's happening. And it turns out after I do my roll out the car, that it is the newspaper. He's throwing newspapers out, delivering newspapers, right? So now we were in the car freaking out. We have tainted each other's minds with all of these scenarios of what is going to happen and who has found out what and how we're going to be in trouble. Just so much to the point where, your stomach is knotted up and it's just like this whole situation has gone completely wrong, right? So when we're in life and we know that something doesn't feel right, sometimes it's just better to forego, even though you might feel like I'm living my best life and this is going to be the time of my life if I go and do this. Guess what? It's really not worth it. It's not worth the stress that you put on yourself. Then you end up making some foolish mistakes while you're out because you're so like, now you're looking over your shoulder, right? You're scared. You don't know what's happening versus saying, you know what, that's not a good idea. That goes against my morals. That goes against my values. Or, hey, I just know within me something is not right about this, right? And just more on a serious, well, that was serious, right? But just to give you another example is, right, Melanie, that's the word, paranoid, right? And that's how, even as adults now, we're just looking like, am I doing this right? Is someone who's talking about me? What opinions are being thrown at me? Because you know that you are supposed to be doing that thing anyway, right? So there is this psychiatrist. She had built a relationship with her patient, and the patient had missed one of the appointments. And so the psychiatrist was kind of like, this is just a little weird. So instead of just being like, okay, well, they just missed the appointment, I'll hear from them later, the psychiatrist ends up calling them, getting the police over to the house. Once they got into the house, the client had actually overdosed on their medications, right? So that's another instance of where you just have to follow your instinct. You have to follow, like when something doesn't feel right. So in that case, the psychiatrist said, me sitting here and not following up with my client, me not reaching out to my client, if I don't do something, something is just off, right? Like I can't, the wrong thing to do would be to sit here and wait and do nothing. When you get that urge, when your intuition tells you to move, then you got to do it, because otherwise it's not going to feel right. And then you're going to be wondering your whole life, like, well, what if I would have done? What if this would have happened, right? Another example of making sure you do what feels right versus going against, what you're supposed to be doing is my father, actually. He was coming home from church, he had preached, he was sweating, he was tired, he just wanted to go home and rest. And the Lord spoke to him and said, hey, stop by this man's house. Now, mind you, the man's house was en route to home for him. And so my father was like, you know what, I'll do it later. I'll check on him later. I'm not going to do it right now, but I will do it. And in the midst of doing that, this man ends up dying. And do you know how horrible, even to this day, my father will speak about it, but how horrible he felt for not yielding to, as William said, that Holy Spirit within that is speaking to you, right? And so we have to make sure that we don't do anything that feels wrong. And in those moments, that disobedience, we know that disobedience feels wrong. And really, and I'm really preaching to myself as well. I'm talking to y'all, but this goes for me as well, that in those moments where we know we're supposed to do something, but yet we are disobedient, then we know that, hey, get in line. Stop doing these things that are going to cause us to feel that paranoid feeling or have the regret or be ashamed or wonder about the what ifs, right? So if we stay on track and we do the things that feel right in those moments, the things that give us peace And that's really what it's about too, right? The things that we're doing, is it bringing us peace? So when we do the things that bring us peace, that's going to help us to protect our vibe. And we've got to protect our vibe because we don't want anything to throw us off track of reaching our goals, of progressing, of moving forward, of being a force to be reckoned with in this journey of life. Okay, guys, so that is number 5 of Protect Your Vibe. I think I'll keep screwing up even the title, but you guys get what I'm saying, hopefully. Hopefully that made sense what I was talking about on tonight. But yeah, Latoya, it's real, it gets real. So make sure, guys, that you protect your vibe, you do the things that you know that you should do, and do the things that feel good within. Follow your instinct. Be obedient to that voice, that Holy Spirit that is speaking within, because there is always a plan. There is always a message. There is something that is there that is for you, and you need to follow it in order to protect your vibe. So that's my time, Camille Ico. I hope that you guys are living the life that you love spiritually, mentally, physically, and financially. Good night.